The unemployment rate in Paradise Bay is 25%. That's a fact that Sheila Johnson has made central to her campaign for mayor, and it's a number that's been haunting Mayor Javier Elias. And while he claims the city's unemployment rate mirrors that of the rest of the county, the truth is Paradise Bay hasn't worked to attract employers, and its land use mix still looks suburban, especially compared to Bend. While blaming the Chuckles administration might be politically convenient, Javier has always believed that you shouldn't seek power unless you plan to make people's lives better. And Sheila's right. There's a problem, and it's the mayor's job to fix it. So he asked the mayor's economic development director, Brucey Scunthorpe, to figure out what's really driving the job crisis. To that end, Scunthorpe interviews local businesses and analyzes the U.S. Census Bureau's annual business survey to learn more about local economic conditions. And he comes back with one conclusion. The real issue isn't just unemployment, it's underemployment. You see, the university's brought in a lot of well-educated residents, but many of them can't find jobs that match their education. So they settle for positions that they're overqualified for, and that puts pressure on the rest of the labor force. People at the bottom get pushed out entirely, and some even end up unhoused. Knowing that underemployment is the root problem gives the city a clearer path forward. Scunthorpe recommends focusing on attracting employers that need a highly educated workforce. That means offices, high-density commercial, high-tech industrial, and large-scale manufacturing. And to make that happen, Mayor Elias rolls out a new zoning proposal. His proposal would allow for increased density by right for all commercial and office properties within a quarter mile of the tram line. Further, it would eliminate all single-family residential zoning in the downtown area, allowing medium-density residential, mixed-use, or high-density office and commercial development on all of those parcels. And finally, it would allow a new industrial development across the river from Little Nantucket. The reaction is immediate and fierce and creates some strange bedfellows. Existing homeowners and environmental groups oppose the plan, but transit advocates, developers, recent grads, and the business community generally are supportive. Governor Timmons backs the plan as well, pledging to fund a bridge across the Carp to open up the land for industrial development. And she also commits to increase funding for transit within the city. And all of that pushes Sheila Johnson into opposition. She promises to protect the region's character and environmental resources if she's elected. And while she knows that the vote will happen well before the election, it's good politics to provide an alternative. At a long and contentious city council meeting, the plan passes by the narrowest margin. 4 councilors vote in favor, 4 vote against, and the mayor casts the tie-breaking vote, which opponents call a conflict of interest, but he vehemently disagrees. But no matter, within weeks, developers start buying up land around town. Locals have already started calling this the Great Land Rush of Paradise Bay. And as cranes shoot up around the city, many residents start to feel that the only constant in Paradise Bay is change. So in this 2-part video, we're stepping into that wave of development. And we're doing that so that we can start to solve unemployment, not just in the city, but in the county as a whole. We'll focus on bringing in jobs that match the workforce the city already has, while also adjusting our demographic mix. And we'll be introducing a few mods to help diagnose and solve the problem. And by the end of part 2, we'll leave the region and the city in a much better place than we found it. And if you're excited to finally address unemployment, hit the like button. And if you're just glad that high-density zoning is finally making its way to Paradise Bay, hit the like button for that too, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Or drop an emoji that represents employment for the sake of engagement. But before we jump in, what's the best meal that you've ever had in 2 minutes flat? For me, it was a truffle butter filet mignon with potato leek mash and roasted carrots. How did I manage a meal like that in just 2 minutes? It was all thanks to today's video sponsor, Factor. Factor provides chef-crafted restaurant-quality meals delivered straight to your door and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No cooking, no prepping, no portioning. I just grab a meal from the fridge, heat it up, and I'm good to go. And that convenience doesn't come at a cost. The Gourmet Plus meal that I had is part of their weekly menu. So when you're craving something a little more elevated, Factor has you covered. And they've also got a ton of other options. I've been getting into their breakfast lately, and their blueberry pancakes with cinnamon butter and chicken sausage, incredible. Same goes for their chorizo egg skillet with turnip hash. So good. And on top of all that, Factor offers 35 fresh meals every week to fit nearly any dietary preference. Whether you're looking for calorie smart, keto, protein plus, vegan and vegetarian, or just the chef's choice, Factor's got you covered. If all that sounds good to you, check out Factor for yourself by heading to factor75.com and using code 50cityplannerplays for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's 50cityplannerplays at factor75.com for 50% off plus free shipping. Using my link and code helps to support the channel, and if you do it, I really appreciate it. Big thanks to longtime channel partner Factor for sponsoring another video. Now let's get back to it. Let's begin by talking about how unemployment actually works in city skylines too, and baseline things a bit. Now, if you're anything like me, this is a topic that's been really confusing to you, and as a result, you've had a really high unemployment rate. Now, you've probably just gone into your info views and taken a look at your population and seen that your unemployment rate is something like 27% or even higher. Now, if you see this, you might think, I just got to add a whole bunch of jobs. It's a bunch of offices or a bunch of industrial, and we'll solve this. But if you've done that, in some cases, it can cause your unemployment to stay the same or go up while completely sapping your demand. And that can be really confusing. And ultimately, the whole reason this is happening is you might not be introducing the correct jobs into your community. Now, that's really difficult to diagnose, at least not without mods. Because of that, I'm introducing a couple into the game. The first will provide some really interesting and important information at a glance. The mod is called City Stats, and it provides a bunch of really basic information right at the top of your screen. But when you need to dive into the details, I've come to believe that one of the most important mods in the game is one that I've never talked about, Infoloom. It allows you to dive into the statistics of your city in a really nuanced way and overlay them so you can diagnose issues with your community. So to solve our unemployment problem, we're going to want to look at workplaces and workforce side by side, and this mod allows you to do that. It lets us see that we actually have most of our workplaces catering towards educated individuals, followed up closely by well-educated folks. Now, our workforce really skews towards highly educated folks. In fact, almost 50% of our total workforce is highly educated. Highly educated people can step down and take jobs of well-educated people, and well-educated people can take the jobs of educated people, and so on and so forth. And as a result, the unemployment rate for highly educated folks is 6.2%. As you work your way down the education ladder, the unemployment rate goes up until you get to uneducated folks who have a 90% unemployment rate. Now, to solve unemployment, I've got a couple of ideas. The first is we have to fix a bug in the game, unfortunately, and that is the office bug. There is currently a bug in the game where all of your offices will eventually only have 5 employees because office goods are not traded and they're not purchased. So we're adding in Office Sales Go, which resolves this bug. Second, we're going to add in a bunch of new city services and adjust our taxes to influence the jobs and the demographic mix in our community. Third, we're going to be adding in some new signature buildings, which will not only add a whole bunch of new jobs into the community, but also make our existing zone buildings much more productive. Fourth, we're going to build that new industrial park. We'll also add in some low-density offices around there to make it feel much more realistic and add in some of those highly educated and well-educated jobs right within our industrial area. And finally, we'll take a look at our downtown, adding in high-density offices and converting those low-density single-family homes to more dense uses. And after we've done all of that, I believe that we will have made a decent dent on unemployment within our community. So let's begin by taking a look at our services and taxes. Now, as we can see up here in City Stats, we have a whole bunch of issues with our city services, but I think that the most important one to contend with is one that's actually in the green, garbage processing. Now, this one looks like it's fine, but we can see that there are a whole bunch of little garbage piling up icons showing up throughout the map. Now, the reason why this one is so devastating is that as garbage piles up, you get pollution. That pollution makes people sick, and those sick people eventually die. So this can add extra pressure to your healthcare and death care if you don't take care of it. Now, the reason why this is green is not so much that our processing is in a bad place. I believe it's that we don't have enough garbage trucks. And over here in Paradise Bay and over in Bailey, we're basically as far from our incinerator as possible. So what I want to do is add another incinerator to this side of town. And this isn't the only way that we could address this. We could also add a landfill, but I think landfills are really terrible land uses, so we're not going to add one of those. Now for this, I'm targeting the area that we are going to have our new industrial park in, right across the Carp River. So I want to realign Poplar Street and send it across the river. So for this, we're going to be using a little bit of eminent domain through here, clearing this area out and reorienting Applegate Street. So I'll begin by dezoning all the uses here, and then we'll get rid of all of them. Now, the reason why I'm getting rid of Poplar Street right there is we're going to send this up and over Applegate. But here's the thing. This is going to change where Applegate goes. So I'm going to take portions of this street and upgrade it to be an arterial, and the same thing here. Then the city will take portions of its existing park and develop it into this road. Next, more eminent domain on these properties right here. And then finally, we'll reestablish this connection right here. Perfect. Now, in the real world, cities rarely give up right of way, so I could see this road being converted, not completely abandoned. This would leave this area open for future development. So we're going to convert this to a 2-lane road, And then I'll sever this connection because we don't want people driving directly into here, and we'll reestablish that right here. Perfect. And one thing I love about this is it tells the story of why this road is here. And you can see how the alignment still aligns with this road. That happens all the time in the real world. Now let's quickly fix our tram. So we'll add our tram track back to the road, and I'll remove it from this road right here. Then we have to adjust our stops. And then we need to take a look at these individual routes and relocate the stop locations. Perfect. Now that's completely operational once again. So now it's finally time to think about this bridge. But before we do that, I want to fix this little road that's just kind of dipping down. So I'll Control H that to that road, and that looks a ton better. And now I'm going to draw the bridge span first. And that's because we are considerably higher over here than we are over here. And I want the bridge to be relatively straight. So I'm just going to go with a 4-lane divided road right across here and try to make sure that the bridge is flat, if at all possible. And that right there is pretty good. Now I'm going to drop this down to our arterial, and we'll start here at this road, ensure that we have snap to guidelines on, and then just run this up. But here's the thing, that turn is kind of abrupt. So I'm going to back this off a little bit, and we'll do something like that. And because anarchy wasn't on, we know that this works just fine. But here's the thing, this is a pretty boring bridge, and I want to do something that mirrors this bridge that we have over here to have that arch. So I'm going to remove these spans and see how this looks if I add in that bridge segment. Honestly, pretty spectacular. That is a real statement piece for the community. Now I need to figure out where this road is going, and I'm thinking that we just want to parallel this rail facility right here. But here's the thing, there is a relatively significant curve throughout this, and I just don't like the way that this is going to interact with our arterial and with the base game zoning. So I'm going to make a couple of modifications. That means that I take a couple of liberties right here and we back this out, at least for the time being. Now the reason I'm doing that is I just want to straighten this out, and we'll just send this straight down here for the time being. And we'll do the exact same thing right here. And we'll make a nice gentle curve. And this is something that we can mirror with our new arterial. And mirror I intend to do. I'm going to find that segment where we joined and send this road out. I'm going to back this up a little ways, and then we'll send this road straight down here. And now I'm going to do something that you're probably not going to love, but I think is reasonable-ish for the time being. We're just going to join this up with this road right here. Now, eventually, I could see a world where the interstate shifts and this road becomes the interstate going straight through Paradise Bay. But for the time being, I don't want to overcommit. So we're just going to connect this into our existing highway. And that'll do the trick for now. And down here, I'll just send this road straight up and then curve gently into this one. Perfect. Now, before we go any further, I've got to purchase some tiles. I've been doing some things within this area that we don't own, and we're just going to kind of go wild. We will get all 4 of these, and this one just for good measure. And apparently we've really upset the apple cart over here, so I'm going to pause things for a moment because we no longer have power to half of our city. And while we're paused, I'm going to think about where this incinerator goes. Now, I don't want to have any land uses on this road right here. This is our arterial. So why don't we actually remove all zoning on this road using the advanced road toolkit? And we're doing this because this is an arterial, and especially within an industrial park context, the main purpose of this road is mobility, getting people to this area and through this area. Now our next road will be a collector. And for the collector, we're going to be using this 2-lane road. Now the purpose of a collector is indeed getting people through an area, but a localized area, but it can also provide a bit of access. So for this one, we will have zoning, and we're going to cross the railroad tracks. So I'm just going to connect up with this road, and I'm trying to find the location where our bend is occurring and backing away from there just a little bit. The reason we're doing that is we would potentially have safety issues if we place this intersection on the bend. So we'll bring that right here and send this straight across. Now, because we're building an industrial park, I want to keep things relatively flat. And that's an acknowledgement that there's going to be a lot of semi traffic in this area, and grades are really challenging for semis. Now, because of that, I will grade things right here. This is the area where I expect that we're going to place our new incineration plant. And I'm trying to imagine that we're pushing the soil around. So we took off the top and we pushed it off the sides. That's the kind of thing you'd see happen here. And then for our local road, the road that provides access, we're going to use an alleyway. I don't think that sidewalks would be a huge priority in an industrial park like this. If you get any paths like this, there would likely be multi-use paths, and those are actually fairly common in newer industrial parks. But for this, I'm going to back things out a little ways. We'll give some space, and we'll go straight across right here. So now I want to place this new incineration plant. And again, I'm going to give it some space, but I need to think about where we're connecting our high voltage lines in. Now these come off the back, and I don't necessarily know that I love that. Now, if I'm thinking about it, I think that we have a high voltage line right there. So I'd likely want to face this towards those lines. So I'm going to temporarily place this like this. Then I'll draw another local road going this way, and we'll spin this around. Now, interestingly, this is not a square asset. So I kind of screwed up there. But no worries, easy enough to fix. And now, one thing I've noticed with the incineration plant in particular is it really doesn't like when you use Move It on it. This is not the greatest financial move, but we're going to delete this and replace it. And thankfully, we have $55 million in the bank, so this is not a problem for us. Now, I want to connect up that high voltage line, but I don't want to use all the space in our industrial park for this. So I'm going to send this underground. So we're going to place this underneath the road, though I'm not sure that it belongs there considering it's a high voltage line. And then we'll run it along the train track right here. So we have kind of a corridor for utilities. And then we'll make a connection right there. Now, this isn't good enough for us to be able to enable power in our city. I think that we also need to have a transformer. So I'm going to add one right here. And I think I'm going to send this one above ground so we get some of those industrial vibes. Perfect. So now I should be able to resume things from a power standpoint, but I think that we're going to have a water problem here because this bridge can't carry water. But no worries, we'll just add the pipes. Perfect. But I can't lie, I feel like this looks horrendous. So we're going to adjust the power lines just a little bit. And I think if I'm careful, I can span most of this. And from an aesthetic standpoint, I think that that's just a lot better. And then there's one more thing I want to do here at our incineration plant, and that's just make sure that we have as many garbage trucks as possible. So we're just going to add our garbage truck depot upgrade. We've got plenty of money. And with that, we've just added 75 new garbage trucks to our fleet. We are going to solve most of our garbage problems because of that. So next, I want to tackle death care because it's a huge problem. Now, most of our problems are actually over in Bend, so I'm going to actually add death care over there. So we'll take a momentary break over in Paradise Bay, and I've got the perfect location for this. So I think that over here in Myrtle Park, we're just going to buy this tile and place death care right here. And interestingly, that adds zoning to this entire area. Not my intention, but I have no problem saying no to these folks. Then we'll just add a crematorium right here. And then we'll add our upgrades. Obviously, we have to add the additional incinerator. I like the refrigerator expansion just in case we have a death wave. And then the additional hearse garage because I like to have as many hearses as possible, especially when we're already in the middle of a death wave like we are right now. And that is going to be incredibly helpful, but I don't think it's all that we need. I think we have to go a bit further. And that's because since the last episode, our cemetery has completely filled up, which is a huge problem for Paradise Bay. It means that we've got our one crematorium, our new one that we built in the previous episode, but just this one. And there's just a lot of people over here. So I think that we have to add one more. And we have our new industrial park over here. Might not seem like an industrial use, but crematoriums are basically allowed anywhere, and they would probably go where the land is cheap. So as a result, we're going to imagine that this isn't a fancy crematorium. It's not one where you have a service. This is a place where maybe you just go and you get cremated if you want to go on the cheap. So as a result, we're going to add another collector over here and then start to think about our roadway network in this general area. So I'm going to send another collector up this way. And then in an acknowledgement that this is an industrial area, we're going to have some curvier roads so that the semis can navigate this area. So I want to send one right up the hill right here, and we'll have a nice grade, something around 5%. And then we'll go with something like this right here. So now I'll do a little bit of grading up here. And honestly, I probably should have done this up front, and I might end up adjusting this road as a result. So basically, I want to take the grade of this arterial and extend this throughout the site. And that will create a bit of a ridge up here, and I'm not overly concerned about that. That's completely fine. So we'll just push this soil down, and we'll provide access with our local roads. Now, you can see that this is jumping up. So I'll just Control H this over to our main arterial. Now finally, time for those local roads, the one that we're taking access from. And I'll back this a ways away from our high voltage line so that we can have some uses underneath that line. And we'll place our crematorium in here. And again, the exact same upgrades, but this time I'm going to add 2 hearse garages. This is a very utilitarian use here. Very good. Next, I want to handle our mail availability because I think that this is impacting demand for all of our employment type uses, commercial, office, and industrial. So for this, I'm going to be placing a post office out here, and you might be wondering why I'm not just placing a post sorting facility. Honestly, this is what I would like to place, but in my testing, it doesn't work. It doesn't send out vehicles. So as a result, I think placing this will actually create more problems than it solves. So I think that adding a modernist post office or something of that nature is a much better fit. So I'm going to indeed add this out here. Maybe we'll just go with this Eastern European post office. It looks a little bit more utilitarian, and I will place this underneath the high voltage line. Now this doesn't have any upgrades, which is one of the big differences between this and the modernist post office. But again, I think it looks a little bit more industrial, so I think it's a good fit over here. Now, if we want more capacity, we want to meet this a little bit more, I think that we have to go down into the city and add a better post office. I ended up going with a fairly small Japanese post office, but Paradise Bay has really grown quite a bit. So I think that we're going to replace this with that modernist post office, which I think is more fitting in a city of this size. Now, this is a much larger building than what we had here before, which to me means we can't replace this. So we're going to redevelop this parcel, and we're going to throw this in this area over here where we have a whole bunch of single family homes. And like I mentioned in the intro, all of these are up for redevelopment, and a bunch of uses are now available by right. This will be one of those uses. Now, the reason why I decided to place this right over here is we have better access to our arterial network than closer to the coast. Plus, this land wouldn't be quite as valuable as the land right near the coast, though reasonably all of this would be fairly valuable land. It's also right along the tram line, which means that all the employees here would have easy access to work. Now, there are upgrades for the modernist post office, and we're going to add them right away. We've got our extension wing, which adds more mail capacity, and we have an extension wing, which adds additional post vans and post trucks. And ultimately, I just think that it also makes the building much more attractive, adds windows to the sides, and just gives it a better footprint. So I think it's great for a city of this size. And now ultimately, it's incumbent upon us to not panic and overreact. I think that we have enough capacity. We just need to let all of the existing mail work its way through our new system. So even though we're still in the red, we've just got to wait it out. So let's switch our focus over to education. And you can see that we're not doing super hot with our elementary or high school education. So I want to dive into this one to see how bad the numbers actually are. And you can see we're about 3,000 shy for elementary and about 2,000 shy for high school. Now, this is actually very important for us to sort out. And Infoloom really tells that story. Because ultimately, we don't have all that many jobs for our uneducated workforce. Those are people who don't have an elementary education. So if we're not educating our masses, they are not able to find jobs. And if we can just get people to a high school education, which we have very few right now, we have a ton of jobs in that range. So we're going to try to completely solve this issue. Now, to do that, I want to add a new high school in this land that we opened up over here. And we're going to go with one of our urban high schools. Now, what I love about this is the small footprint. You can fit this thing in basically anywhere. And when you add on to it, you add up, not out. Now, the only thing I don't love about this is we have a whole bunch of arterials, but we do have excellent access to basically the entire tram network, which does make this a better location. It's one of the redeeming factors. So I'm going to place this on Blackthorn Street. while also aligning it to the rest of our grid by placing it on Brook Street right here first. And that cleans up our grid in this location, which I think is a good thing. Then I want to add the upgrades right away. The first gives us a gym extension, which I think you have to have for high school, as well as the extension wing, which will give us an extra 800 capacity, which brings us in line with our shortfall right now. And ultimately, these two extensions just make the building look better too, which I appreciate. But we've got some issues with this with our surfaces, so let's clean those up while we're thinking about it. And that's looking pretty darn good in my opinion. And that brings us to elementary school capacity. And for that one, I think that the school district is going to purchase some of these lower density homes over here with the idea of having a elementary school within close walking distance to this entire neighborhood. So we'll clear a parcel. And then for this one, I think I want to go with the Southwestern USA Elementary School. That fits perfectly within this parcel. And then we'll have room for our upgrades as well, because we absolutely want to have the arts and music building. That's another 500 student capacity, as well as the additional classrooms. That's 1,000 more students. And then the annex building as well, which is another 750 students. And now this school is providing capacity for 3,250 students, which is outstanding. And even though we're not completely there with capacity, once some of our existing students make their way through the education system, we should be in a good place here as well. And now it's finally time to adjust our taxes. But before we do all of this, I feel like we have to talk about who works where. And again, the main reason for this is we currently have a very highly educated workforce, and our workplaces skew towards educated employees. So let's get some anecdotal evidence by looking around the map at existing workplaces. Starting with industrial, right here we have a plant that's making materials. They have 145 employees. The reason they have this many is because they're a level 5 company. And the higher the level, the more employees that you have. They employ predominantly educated workers, though they have a number that are poorly educated and well educated. They don't provide employment to anyone at the very top or the very bottom of the education ladder. Now that is not universal for industrial. Right here, we have a pharmaceuticals company. They employ 90 people, 67 of which are highly educated, 23 of which are well educated, and no one underneath there can work at this pharmaceutical company. Now, interestingly, these buildings are the exact same size and the exact same zoning category, and they've had equal chance of spawning here because our tax incentives don't align with one or the other. At the same time, this level 5 building right here has 100 employees, 25 of which are uneducated, 50 of which are poorly educated, and 25 of which are educated. Nothing above there is provided. Now, when we look at the uses here, it kind of makes sense. They're producing timber products. That's why most of their employees are not educated. Here at our pharmaceutical company, they are producing pharmaceuticals which require chemists, which would be highly educated positions. Now, I mention all of this because we could zone in just general industrial and get the wrong kind of workplace if we're not careful. But there's one more industrial category that you got to watch out for as well: warehousing. And that's because it provides 0 jobs. Now, I mention all of this because all of these are industrial uses. And ultimately, even though they're all required, if you're trying to attract a certain type of workplace, you're going to need to incentivize it with taxes. Because obviously, though I want lots of new workplaces, what I need the most of are going to be those electronics or pharmaceutical companies that have a very highly educated workforce. So that might make you think, we'll just have a whole bunch of offices. That'll solve all the problems. But here's the thing. Looking at this right here, Indie Lizard, it's a software company, 29 educated workers, 29 highly educated workers, and 58 well-educated workers. So this will help us, but it won't get us all the way there. Almost the exact same mix at this company, though this software company skews towards highly educated workers. Now again, this is a demonstration that certain types of companies will skew towards employing certain types of workers. So we want to make sure that we are attracting software development companies to our city. And then looking at building density, right here we have a financial firm. And even though they have a few more employees in that low density office, again, this is skewing towards well-educated employees, not highly educated. There's actually more educated jobs at this building than there are highly educated. Yet right here with the software company, we'll again see that there's a ton of highly educated positions. Then lastly, I figure we should probably take a look at commercial as well. Here for this high density commercial, It's about the same mix as financial, and here at this furniture retailer, there are no highly educated positions at all. So here's where this leaves us. For our residential taxes, I want to reset things a bit. So I want to chase some of the highly educated workers out of the community, and we're going to do so aggressively, cranking their taxes up to 20%. I'm going to bump up the taxes for uneducated workers as well, because again, I don't want to attract them to the community. So let's leave them at 15%. For poorly educated, again, a category that's overrepresented, we're going to say 12%. We should, in theory, have plenty of jobs for our well-educated workforce and our educated workforce. So I'm going to leave these relatively close to where they are, maybe bumping down educated just a little bit. We'll attract them into the community. Next, looking at our commercial, I don't really want to micromanage this one because people need different goods. So I think generally I just want them welcomed into the community. So we're going to lower the taxes across the board to 7%. Now, industrial is where things get interesting, because obviously we want to attract certain types of employers into the region. I think electronics is one that we really want to attract into the region for two reasons. This requires a more highly educated workforce, but it's also the input for software, which will make software more attractive. So we're going to lower the percentage here to 5%. We're also going to lower the percentage here for chemicals because that's the input to pharmaceuticals. So we'll take that down to 7. And then pharmaceuticals, we know, really caters to that highly educated workforce. So we're going to bump this all the way down to 3%. And I'm not sure that I'm going to leave it here, but for now, it seems like an appropriate place for this to be. And then finally, I'm going to drop minerals down to 7%. That is the input for electronics. And if you're ever curious about that, go into the production tab and just highlight the good that you're looking for. And I actually can see that it's minerals and plastics. So I think that will lower that one as well. And we'll drop this down to 7% too. And then finally, for our offices, I want to lower the tax rate generally. We'll take that down to 8%. But then knowing that software really employs a lot of those highly educated workers, I really want to incentivize software companies to come into our community. So we'll drop this down to 5%. Now, ultimately, we're still in the green, so I feel comfortable with where we're at from a budgetary standpoint. But honestly, things are going to be adjusting for quite some time. So we'll check back in with our overall numbers at the end of the episode and make final adjustments. But for now, let's move on to adding some signature buildings. There are a number of reasons why I think it's important to add signature buildings to the build, and I thought it would just be best to look at an existing signature building to demonstrate why they're so important. So right here we have our paper mill, which is the Lewis Lumber Company, and we can see that this employs 531 people, 132 of which are highly educated. So this is a very important building just from an employment standpoint. But it also provides a 5% industrial efficiency bonus, which helps every single zoned industry that we have in the entire build. And that is what most of these buildings do. They provide some sort of overall bonus to your city. So adding these is really just a net positive. They're also free, so you really have nothing to lose. So I want to go through all of these buildings and add in basically anything that has employment that fits the build. So we're going to go through our industrial, our office, and our commercial. But I want to start out with industrial because I think that we're going to get the most bang for our buck here. Now, if we wanted to unlock these naturally, we're on the cusp of unlocking many of them. You can see that our chemical plant is very, very, very close. For ground earth, we would just have to add a couple more mining hubs. Same thing with our vehicle factory. We just have to have 4 more oil drilling areas or divide our existing ones in half. And for our pharmaceuticals company, we would just need to add a medical university. But here's the thing. I feel like most of the requirements for these just don't make a lot of sense, at least for what we're doing. We already have a technical college, so adding another one when we don't have a need for that doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, obviously, I could just plop it and delete it so I unlock this, but I have find it, so I'm just going to find it myself and plop it. Same thing with the chemical plant. We are going to reach 8,000 cells of industrial later on this episode, but I'm going to likely place this first. But I will naturally unlock the vehicle factory, and to do that, we're just going to take our existing industrial hub areas and divide them in half. And what I mean by that is we currently have 6 oil fields over here, and if we wanted to unlock our automotive plant, we have to have 10. So we could just divide some of these in half to reach our goal. So for that, I'm just going to take this one And we'll just do something like that. Now, it's unfortunate that this has to start over, but this does get us closer to unlocking this. You can see that now we have 7 of the 10 that we need. So let's get the rest of the way there. And then we'll shrink up a couple of existing farms and sneak a couple more in. And just like that, we unlock our vehicle factory, which is going to be fantastic for our new industrial park. So let's get this thing plopped, and it is massive, just absolutely massive. So we're gonna need to make sure that we have a nice level pad for this. We don't wanna just plop this willy-nilly like. We can see this is gonna take up a larger area than our incinerator. So I've graded back to the incinerator, and I'll plop this right here, which unlocks the chemical plant, which is kind of funny. Apparently they are considering this part of those zoning blocks, so they are all related. So I decided to place this right here though, so we could share access, which is something that you might expect to see in a site like this. And now I just want to extend this road up all the way to here. And I'm guessing that some of you are wondering why I'm placing this directly on a collector. It sometimes happens. And honestly, this is the end of the collector. It's basically functioning as a local road. Now, before we move on from this, there's something I'm noticing about this facility as well as our incinerator that's kind of bothering me. The incinerator has 75 garbage trucks and it has just this many parking stalls. That's not okay. That means that there's actually not enough parking for the workers here. Because you'd imagine that there is a 75 garbage truck drivers plus all the support staff. And in the game, it's 85 people. So I don't know where they're parking right now. Here at our automotive plant, we're starting out with 363 workers, 90 of which are highly educated, which is great. And they have no parking. So I don't know where these folks would go. It looks like we've got a couple of stalls right here and a couple back here. So if we want this to feel realistic, we've got to add parking and a lot of it. So I'm just going to grab the invisible parking lot road and we'll just run that on the back side of this. And right now this is totally functional, but it's not really related to this facility. So we are going to do some work here. We'll make sure that we're linking up these connections, which means that we'll have to adjust our fences and draw those in ourselves, but it's going to be totally worth it if we want this to feel like a cohesive facility. And honestly, I kind of want everyone to drive through the main gate. So even though I added those connections right there, I'm going to get rid of them because I want folks to drive into the facility by the main gate. And in my opinion, this looks like a much more appropriate amount of parking for this facility. So we'll do the exact same thing over here. And deep regret as I inadvertently deleted some of the subsurface here for the incinerator, but we got it back. But I did notice that there's one more thing that we've got to change. Right here, this entryway is facing in the wrong direction. I think it's just a surface issue, but yeah, it definitely is. So all we have to do is change the surface and everything should be good to go. And there we go. That is much better. It looks much more reasonable, looks much more finished. Now, when we placed our car manufacturer, we also unlocked our chemical plant, so I feel like we should place that. This says chemicals are everything and more are made here every day. That doesn't make any sense, but we're going to place that fairly close to all of these. And I feel like something like this could work. I wouldn't want to place it right here because it could pollute all these homes. Same thing over here. And honestly, now the more that I think about it, I'm convincing myself that it might want to go over here. The old SimCity strategy, place these things as far away from your people as possible and as close to the edge of the map. So we're going to do that. That also means that we need to have another connection across the rail, which I'm not overly concerned about. We will be adding some sort of a cargo facility over here, but I'm likely going to place that over here on this side of the tracks, kind of give it a bit of separation. So I'll add that collector right here, and then we're going to grade out for this facility just like we did with the rest of them. And I'm going to place this closer to the back of this, and there is a rationale for this. Basically, once we place our rail facility, I could place a warehouse, and I'm thinking that I could place that right here, and it might be a good fit. But again, we don't have parking at this facility. There's just a couple of stalls right here, and this employs 156 people, many of which are highly educated, which is fantastic. So we're going to add a parking lot right next to this again. And I think for this one, I will go a little bit larger relative to the size of the facility itself. And then just like I did with our automotive plant, I'm going to make sure that we're connecting this to the inside paths. And actually, it's interesting. The circulation pattern in here is one way, which doesn't exactly fit what we're doing. It might have been better to place this on this side, but we're already committed at this point.
Serenity now, serenity now.
And my goodness, I know that that was only a minute for you, but that was like 30 for me. I completely corrupted my settings by moving it a little bit too hard. So I'm going to not move it quite so hard. We'll just try to take it down a notch. Anyway, the thing I was trying to do was make sure that all of these rows were nice and even, because you can see that they're just a little bit off. And that can sometimes happen when you don't actually connect up. You can see that these are overlapping. So I just need to back these out and try again. Same thing at the top. And then make sure that I have snap to existing geometry selected. If you don't have that selected, that's when you run into that problem. Perfect. And I forgot that I have Algendo's vanilla asphalt surfaces, which can go right over the top of all of these markers right here and make this whole thing look much, much, much nicer. That is fantastic. And there's one more industrial signature building that I want to place. That is going to be the pharma. Now, this is the one that requires the medical university. We're not going to plop that. I'm not overly concerned, but I am going to force myself to unlock that chain. And I feel like I've done my part to be a good person now. And now I'll just search for it. And if I just look for pharma underneath buildings, here it is. This one is also fairly large, but this is a fairly clean industrial user. So I can place this closer to all of our people if I want to. Honestly, I would love to place it right here, but I didn't leave enough space, but it's not the end of the world. I'll place it over here, kind of near this facility, but I'm going to give it some space. And then just like I did for our other facilities, I just want to see what parking looks like. This one actually has a decent amount, and it only has 100 employees, so I'm going to imagine that they're working shifts, and this is an adequate amount of parking. I know in reality it's probably not, but it's probably close enough, at least for the game. My bigger problem here is that this is a big cul-de-sac, so I think that we need to de-cul-de-sac this area. So we'll add a collector through here, and for this one we're going to do some grading. And it's interesting, I was going to cross right here, but there's actually a fair amount of grade. So instead, I created a flat pad right here. Imagine that we're going to borrow some soil from over here and push it over here. And if we're going to de-cul-de-sac this, it's probably got to happen somewhere else, because we're not going to go right up the side right here and join in at the curve like I said we didn't want to do. So what I think we're going to do instead is create a circulation pattern around the building. So I'm just going to sneak this over just a little bit. And then being mindful that this is an industrial park, we'll give this a nice curve. And then we'll send this back. And then I want to mirror the terrain back here. So we'll do something like that, which feels fairly natural to me. And the other nice thing about this is it opens up this area for future expansion of this factory. And if we're going to do that, I also feel like we should get rid of this outer fence, and we'll extend the parcel out. And I'm going to get rid of all these trees and extend the surface so that I don't forget. Perfect, and we'll do the landscaping later on in the video. But reasonably, this hasn't de-cul-de-saced this area, so I have another solution. We are going to remove this fence right here. We'll have to add this back later on. Actually, I will not remove that. I don't want to have to remove all that internal stuff, so I'm going to do this. We'll get rid of this grass, and I'll extend that pavement out. And then we'll get rid of just this marker. We can do that easily again with Algendo surfaces. And we can even make it all functional if we want to, which I will, by adding on to the vanilla invisible networks, which is perfect. And then I do want this to feel controlled, so I think I'll just steal the parking lot booth from over here. We'll just place that on this end. And we'll grab those gates as well. And I can't lie, the ability to make this completely functional is one of my favorite features in City Skylines 2. This is fantastic. Eventually, we'll likely see some vehicles coming up here. Now, I did do a little bit of off-camera work. I changed this surface. The color was a little bit off, so I replaced it with Algendos. And now it extends out a bit further, but it just feels like we've had different pavement work, which is good in my opinion. Now let's switch gears from our industrial park and start adding some signature buildings to our city's core. And starting out with our commercial buildings, there are really two that I've zeroed in on. The first is the Vrydog building, which I'm sure that I completely butchered. This is a tourism building. I believe it's like an art store, and I think it'll fit really nicely in the downtown area. We have no commercial demand right now, so I'm not sure when this will actually fill in, but when it does, it should provide a couple of jobs, not all that many, but a couple. So I think I want to replace some of these row homes right here, and we'll likely replace the whole row of these once we get into our zoning section. But for now, I'll just get rid of these and we'll place this building right here. And it's an absolutely beautiful asset that I think is going to be a really nice cornerstone of our downtown area. And the other commercial signature building I want to place is the Northeastern Inn. This one is a little bit less flashy, but it should help us with our budget because now we're in the red. So I'm going to place this where we had our post office before. It should fit perfectly. And it allows us to reuse this parking back here, of which there's a lot. So I think it's a good thing. So considering that this is kind of the gateway to the downtown area, I think it makes sense. You can get off the train and walk on over here. It's not all that far away. And it leaves us this gap right here, which will just add our favorite decorative park to fill in. And actually, that doesn't work because that's parking down there. So right now, you could leave this parking facility and just drive into this. That wouldn't be great. So we'll replace that with an alley. And look at that, it gets used basically immediately. That's perfect. Wonderful. And in terms of the employment that these are offering, this building right here has 56 jobs, most of which are well educated, but it does have some highly educated positions. And then for our hotel over here, 60 jobs, but they're really skewed towards the educated positions. So we're really doubling down on those. Now, hopefully we can add some highly educated positions with our office signature buildings. And there are really two that I want to add. The first is the round office. I want to add this one because I really like this asset. It also improves office efficiency by 1% citywide and improves our interest in university education by 5% and our graduation chance by 1%. Now, this is a fairly small building, but it's fairly distinctive as well. So I want to find a really nice parcel for this one where it could really stand out. And I think that I'm going to place that right over here. We've got this triangular parcel, which I think is really unique. So we'll remove these users and replace them with this building. And I'm not 100% sure how I will decorate around this, but I want it to feel like this entire parcel belongs to this. Maybe we'll extend this road and turn this little triangle into some sort of a park. And then we're going to place one more office signature building, our Twain Tower. Now, this is a really lovely asset. It's not overly tall, it's not overly wide or overly big, which makes it really ideal for retrofitting in. So for this building, which will be our tallest building for a little while, I want to make sure that we're placing it this way and not this way because I don't want to block a whole bunch of water views. This seems to be the most appropriate way of handling it. And you still get water views basically everywhere in this building. Now, I'm showing you it over here because I think this is where we're going to add it. We've got a whole bunch of low density uses. These would be inexpensive properties. It's not near all of the value, which would make this a very desirable place to begin redevelopment. So I'm going to place this right about here. We'll get rid of these users. And it fits perfectly. The other nice thing about this is it's right near the tram line, which I think would make this a very desirable area. The only thing that kind of stinks is that we have the train going by. I'm going to get rid of that landscaping, so I remember to do something much bigger over here because we've got to completely block the train. I think that would be a requirement if you were building this office tower. Now, it looks like I've placed this inappropriately. It's not happy, so I'll spin it around. And honestly, if I'm going to do that, I might as well try to center it a bit more. And that does look a bit nicer in my opinion. And now the building's not unhappy. Now, in terms of what these have done for our employment, the round office only has 61 employees, though most of them are highly educated. And the Twain Tower only has 127, at least for now. Most of these are well educated. And I think that this is a good demonstration that zoning is going to have to carry a lot of the water for us. But I think for our zoning, we're gonna have to wait for part 2 of this video because there's still a lot of work to do. But I have faith that we can reduce the unemployment rate in Paradise Bay and Magnolia County generally. It's just gonna take a little bit more work. So in the next one, we are going to zone in the industrial park. We're gonna also add density to the downtown area. So stay tuned. There are some big changes on the horizon, but we have to give it the time that it deserves. But we still accomplished a ton today, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and get started lowering unemployment here in Magnolia County. And for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.